All right, welcome back. Chase Thomas Podcast, taping this late on a Tuesday. First timer, Chris Marler is here. Chris, good evening, sir. How are you?
I'm good. I've enjoyed getting to know you off air here.
Right.
Last 7 minutes maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And big fan of you on social media. So it's good to put a face with the I guess profile picture. I don't know.
There you go. Well, it's also like, it's interesting you say fan of my social media, because my social media is me posting my work and then hopping off social media, like me scheduling all my tweets out in TweetDeck and then literally leaving Twitter, because there's just like, shout out to my guy Graham Coffee and other folks like that who just, they tweet through it and they're just fine tweeting through it. You're one of those guys. I can't get caught up into the mess. Like I can't do it. Like, Brandon Walker just like asks for it every day. Like he just wakes up and he's like, who can I piss off today? And then you just look through it and you're like, I can't do that. That's not for me.
I don't want to be in Brandon Walker's. I don't want to be in the same area as that. Yeah. Like I wouldn't say orbit. But I think that, I think there's one of the first things I learned, the very first thing at Saturday Down South when I started there, years ago was it's I did stand-up comedy for a long time. So this has always been it's like kind of a niche, or not a niche thing, but it's kind of like a natural fit for me. At the same time, you think about stand-up comedy, stand-up comedians, what they all want attention, right? They also all want that positive affirmation right away. It's like you say something and you can see people laugh, or you post something, you can see people like stuff. Fuck, man. I'm allowed to say bad words, right?
Yeah, you can say it. Yeah. Okay.
So you write something. I think the first thing I ever wrote, and it was this article I used to always do, is my favorite thing called Winning and Boozing. And we would preview every game, put a booze attached to it for each, tailgate that weekend. It's like my baby. It's my favorite thing. First thing is this is the dumbest thing I've ever read in my life. And I was like, sucks. And then people are like, yeah, don't ever read the comments. It's the first thing you get to. So the way you're doing it is smarter. I just, I refuse to be emotionally healthy, I guess. So it's just something I got to work on my own time.
No, you write, you schedule your stuff, you send it all in, you just move on with your day. Like I can't do it, man.
I tried to do a better job of I enjoy the interaction because I just love college football. That's my favorite thing. And I'm pretty good at being a smart ass about stuff. But the Brandon Walker thing, it's there's a different level of where I think.
And we should say we're not against Brandon Walker. It's just that he wakes up. Yeah, no, he just it's just the Twitter where I see it. I sweat when I see him post that stuff. I sweat for him, where I don't have that in me to do something like that.
Right. And it takes I think a different person, maybe a better person. I don't know. But it's because you got to have thicker skin. I don't have that kind of thick skin, and he definitely does.
You have to be okay with getting quote tweeted 97 times, just calling you the worst things known to man.
It's just trying not to I found especially growing up in this sport, you have rivals, right? You're not everyone's friend, but it's best to almost sometimes just kind of default to being I love college football instead of being screw this fan base, unless it's Georgia, and then I will fight with them all day long.
Exactly. It is funny that you bring up the comments and stuff like that, because even in my experience, moving this to YouTube and stuff like that, there was one video where somebody commented and they were at the what was that pause at the 7:58 mark of this one, because they're how did you not know that the offensive coordinator was playing? I forgot what it was. It was an Oklahoma State thing, and I was what? Are there people taking notes on he says he's a podcaster and he's an expert, and he had to think for a second about who this offensive coordinator was at this particular moment. I'm is that how people listen to it? I think it's the same when you read the just reviews of restaurant reviews from people, where it's do they really go home and they're while they're on a date or they're out with their family, they went up to a thing where you're supposed to be present with your family.
Right.
And they're taking mental notes of I can't wait to rip this place when I get home. I don't understand that whatsoever.
The thing is too, and I think that it's so funny bringing this up, because I say this all the time on our podcast and in general. And I always say this: we're a nation of haters. We love to watch people fail. We love like Texas. We love to shit on Texas. We love. I love it when Ohio State and Notre Dame are terrible, or when they fail, or whatever else. As if you're a Tennessee guy, you have seen it as well. People have enjoyed Tennessee being down and kind of being the butt of the joke at times. And I think people are scared because you're getting on, you're turning a corner where that's not going to be the case anymore.
Oh, Tennessee baseball was an experience unlike any other.
It was if Vol Twitter became a team.
Yes.
It was wild,
That
man.
was when I actually tweeted. Like, if you want to get me out and like showing some stuff, it's like when people would go at Tennessee, like I know this guys and talking to like it's just that stuff would drive me up the wall. The way people talked about Tennessee baseball and just ruining the game and everything. People hated Tennessee baseball, and you saw it with the ratings drop. Like when Tennessee was eliminated, it was like, oh, that's what we were watching for. Is like
Right.
we didn't, and it was the dumbest thing where it's like two things can be true. Tennessee was the best baseball team in the country this year,
Yep.
and it wasn't particularly close. And that was still the case. Like they were number one all season long. They're the best team. But the best team doesn't win. The last three number one seeds didn't even make it to Omaha. Like that's not a thing. Ole Miss barely. They shouldn't even. You can make the case they shouldn't even been in the tournament, and
Yeah.
they make it and they win the whole thing. Like
Tennessee,
it's
like,
silly.
I played college baseball, and in Delmonico, I remember like getting like some, not, I wasn't recruited by Tennessee like a lot. I was like I sent like questionnaires and shit like that. But like I remember, going through that whole process like my junior year before like everything fell off. I just didn't grow. So like my junior year, I had like, I was getting like handwritten Christmas cards from like Clemson, Vandy, and Bama, and I was like, man, I'm gonna go pro. Like I am. This is my destiny. And then like my senior year, like, did you lose an inch or something? Like what? Like just nothing progressed, right? But like baseball is hard enough. I went to MTSU out of high school and hated it, man, and then went to like a D2 school. But like baseball's boring enough. And outside of what's the one, I didn't like the one kid, the right fielder, who was arguably maybe the best player.
Jordan Beck.
Yeah, just, I didn't like the middle finger thing around first base.
Okay.
That was the only thing I disagreed with. But all that other stuff, like, man, baseball is boring enough. You're losing so much of the fandom and like fans like at a younger age and this is like the shift of it. I tell you what, man. And again, we don't know each other that like well, but you know me well enough from social media. I think anybody would agree with this. If I was playing baseball nowadays, I would be the biggest asshole imaginable. Like, because it's finally kind of celebrated. And it's like, and it, I think it brings more to the game. And it's obvious to see, like, I tell you what, man, you guys have
apologies to my future to my father on this, because if I have a son, like I am teaching him how to pet, like all of that. Like I am ruining the game all over the place. Like, yeah, you're pimping the bat, you're doing whatever, you're like, we're giving you a crazy walk-up song. We're doing all of that. Like that's happening.
My walk-up song was my last walk-up song before I quit in college. It was Bossy by Keyless. I mean, like it was.
What would it be now?
What would it be now? Probably still Bossy.
Okay.
No, I don't know. Honestly, I had to think about that. Like mine was like all over the place. Cause like when I was like kind of like a nerd and like more reserved kid out of high school, it was like OAR, City on Down. And I fucked it up because it was supposed to be the live version. And so it's like cut in at 11 seconds. And it was like it just cut in right during the song. It was lucky I only got like 8 pass that year. But it was that. And then it went to California Love, but the Tupac line where he says, out on bail, fresh out of jail, California dreaming, since I stepped on the scene, Hoochie screaming, because 20-year-old Chris apparently thought he had Hoochie screaming. And then Keyless. So
people are saying, but
it's good. Yeah, people are saying, but I think it's good for baseball, and it's like it's good for y'all's fan base, because I think one of the things to do with like the way the what makes the SEC so great in a lot of ways is like you see some of these, like not everyone can be great at football. They just can't, because it's a gauntlet to get through. Like and I think people are it's like Arkansas, like we are only 2 years removed from the Chad Morris era, but like let's not forget how bad that was for them. So it's cool to see like teams like that. And I'm not saying it's in a negative way to Tennessee, but especially for last year, that team having success with baseball, and Arkansas having success with baseball, and Mississippi State, winning the national championship the year before, even Vandy, right? Like,
let's not go that far.
Yeah, let's not go that far. It's fine. But like, it's cool for those fan bases because they still care, man. And it was cool to see Tennessee fans come out in droves, and like, no matter what,
you could not get a ticket. There were people like I remember. This is one of the cool things about being a graduate student is like, oh, you just flash the card, and you're like, because I don't do the press box thing. I don't do any of that. I've never had any interest in that. It's not my jam. Like if I'm in Neyland, I want to be super close, and I just want to like feel it and just be a part of the action. Like I want to react. Like I'm just gonna go ahead and say like I'm gonna emote. Like that's just I can't just turn that off. I just don't think that's why I want to go to a sporting event. Like that's just not something that interests me. But Tennessee, like Georgia baseball game, random regular season series, and tickets were sold out by like 1:00 on a Saturday. And you're just like, what is happening? Like that people are getting up and they were using their whole day to get there early, waiting in line for a college baseball game. It's Georgia, like a regular season baseball game. Like they showed out in droves. Like every weekend was a party. Like I wrote about this extensively, and it was just like, that was one of my favorite sports seasons of like anything,
Yeah.
like anything I've ever experienced. And just because it helped being able to be there for so many of those games. But like, it was such a fun ride. I did not care that they didn't win a national title. There was so much joy, and we had so much fun winning 17-1 so many different times, and just
Dude.
the burying people was
Yeah.
just unreal. It's just, you don't
It
see
is.
that in baseball ever.
No, you guys like so like, and I'm not saying this to my own horn because I was a role player on this team. Like I said, I did not develop, and I just did not understand. Like I didn't realize you'd need to be playing year round. I didn't play travel ball. I would pick up a bat from like August to January, and then roll up to these like national showcases with like a wooden bat and like an old glove, and be like I was like a fucking sandlot for like I just didn't understand that it's like a real thing I should be taking seriously. Like, oh, I roll out of bed. Like, no, you don't, Chris. Not when it's like 92. But I mean, like. And now it's like these kids I wouldn't stand a chance in today's baseball with like how hard everyone's throwing, but it's just so cool to see like what they've been able to do. And you brought up, like, I think probably positioned perfectly is like, it's the off season, right? Because it's not football in the SEC, and you still have people showing up in droves, and like you have this season. That's the best baseball team I've ever seen. Like we were ranked number 1 in the country in Division II, right? And we had like 8 guys play professional baseball and all that kind of stuff. We faced some really good teams. And some really good professional players that end up pitching in the bigs and everything. But Tennessee, you lose less than 10 games in a full college baseball season in any level. That's insane.
They didn't lose a home series. Like, that didn't happen until the Notre Dame series where they got knocked out. That was it. Like, that was the only home series they lost. I mean, it was wild. The only SEC series they lost was at Kentucky, which was just a gloomy, terrible on the road. Just whenever you get to Kentucky, like, ugh. Kentucky in March or April, whenever it was not a pleasant experience. But you know what's weird too? Okay, so I saw. Is this true? Did you go to Parkview?
Yeah,
I went to Parkview.
You went to Parkview? I went a lot longer ago than you did.
What year did you graduate in Parkview? Are you part of the? Do you want to say? Were you a part of, like, if I look at some Cecil Flo, Jeff Francoeur, Zeb McKenzie memorabilia, am I going to see like a Chris Marler behind them?
Yeah, I didn't play baseball. I didn't play football. I only played baseball. But I played.
Yeah, but like, are you in the student section? Like, am I seeing you just behind a Sean Dawkins or a Dustin Wade photo? Yeah.
I had Brad Lester pass math his 10th grade year, and I wish I wouldn't have, because then he ended up going to Auburn.
Well, hold on. He was a great player for us. Brad was awesome.
Wait, for us?
For Parkview.
Oh, for us, yeah, for sure.
I meant Parkview. Yeah.
No,
one of the fastest dudes I've ever seen. Brad Lester was so fast.
Yeah.
Him, was he the Kenny Irons? I think those two were the 2 running backs, the best ones in Gwinnett County at that point. Kenny Irons was at Decula, right?
Yeah.
And then he went to South Carolina, I seem to recall, right? Yeah.
I thought he went to Auburn.
Kenny Irons? I thought Kenny Irons was a South Carolina guy.
Maybe.
Lester went to Auburn.
Yeah.
I know Lester did, but that's wild. That's a small world, man. Yeah,
what year did you graduate?
2009.
Oh, so that's not even that far off. Okay, so 2004.
Yeah, it's not far.
Yeah, it's like that. I graduated then. I played baseball all 4 years. But like from very early on, like, and I hate to, again, no part of this is like me like toot my own horn, like trying to relive glory days, because I was not any big deal at all. Not like now. Not like now. You know what I mean? But like, and I'm obviously kidding if anybody thinks I'm being serious. But like, I remember going to Parkview, and everyone, like when you're in high school, like people, you play multiple sports, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've tried to explain this to people, like, oh, did you play football? Because like you cover football. I'm like, no, because we were ranked number 2 in the country like, we won 45 straight games. I mean, it was stupid. And it was at the highest level at the time, which I don't even know how many A's there are now in Georgia. There's 7 now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it was a different world, man, but it was a lot of fun because playing with Jeff and all those guys, and like just the stuff that they did. And this is also that time too where like our baseball program, our football is awesome, but our baseball program was like, I mean, we won.
But I mean, the baseball program now, you could argue it's better. Like Matt Olson put it, but like they're winning national titles. Like Chan Brown's turned them into like a national powerhouse. It's so random, but like Parkview just runs baseball now.
So it's not even arguably. It's like it is. They are better. And I remember like my sophomore year was when Jeff was a senior, and they were just not going to get beat because Jeff Francoeur was like it was. I've heard people say this about Bo Jackson. I've heard people say about Marcus Dupree, and I'm really dating myself at this point. But like you see these kids in high school, I've never seen anything like what I saw with Jeff Francoeur in high school.
That's how it was with Matt Olson.
Was it really?
Yeah, because Matt had like the lightest swing that would carry for like his swing was so effortless and
Right.
just the fear of like high school kids. He was so much bigger and so
Yeah.
much stronger where it just didn't look right. And I think it's kind of where you're going with the Bo
Yes.
Jackson, where it just doesn't look fair what Matt Olson's doing here.
Right. I just remember with Jeff, it was like, you know, because then like Georgia's a great state for especially for baseball talent. And so like my junior year, we were ranked 5th in the country. We got bounced in the first round by a team that we had beaten in the only doubleheader we played all season. We were like 24-1 and lost to them in the first round. But like, so it's, you know, like you were saying earlier with Tennessee, it's difficult to do. With Parkview and Jeff, I remember like his final like I guess games as a high schooler, right? We're in the championships against Lassiter, and they've got a kid like they're 2 starters. One's going to Tech, one's going to Florida. Jeff was like on the doubleheader. He was 6 for 7 with 4 home runs, 2 doubles. He got both wins on the mound. And then like he had a home run. It was supposed to be his last at bat. And we ended up batting around and he came back up. And I was like, oh my God. And the bases were loaded. And I was like, oh, he's going to hit a fucking grand slam.
Oh, I was at this game.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. I was at this game. I know exactly what you're talking about. I was there for that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's
anyway.
Wild. Small world, man.
Listeners love hearing about our high school glory days.
Hold on. Like I had Coach Godfrey on yesterday. So no, he was the offensive coordinator when you were there.
Oh, he taught me computers. Not well.
Did he really?
I don't know anything about computers. It's not his fault, but I mean.
Well, Coach Salo was doing that for a while too. We had Coach Salo and all that, but yeah, taught you computers. I think something's changed since then. Can you imagine like teaching? I always think about that too, like journalism, like me doing undergrad in journalism and like the stuff that I learned. I mean, the master's program here at UT is phenomenal, but like it's so hard to teach that now with how much everything changes, where I'm just like, what are they telling these kids in high school of like, hey, here's what you got to do. I just imagine it's so outdated preparing kids for this kind of world.
Well, I mean, dude,
because it changes so much so quick.
I mean, I'm 36 and I remember I wanted to do sports broadcasting. And then I went to MTSU because they had a great program. And then I transferred to Georgia College in Milledgeville. And if you don't know where Georgia College is, where Roethlisberger got in all that trouble, that's where I was in Milledgeville.
Also, Mini Athens, Millie Vegas. It's a fun time.
Mini Athens. My girlfriend's going to hate that.
It is Mini Athens. Like, that's what it is. When you go down there, it's Mini Athens. Do you disagree?
Athens is the best college town in America.
Oh, hold on.
There's 115 bars there in a 3-block radius. There are 4 in Milledgeville, or at least there were when I was there. I mean, I love Milledgeville. I was there for enough years where
Milledgeville's fun, man. Like I don't have no qualms about Milledgeville.
But I just remember like my junior year when you start getting into your program, which was sports broadcasting, they're like, all right, you're going to have to drive to Macon. That's part of the program. And I was like, I don't even have a car. I'm putting myself through school. And they're like, well, you can't be in the program. And then I was like, so I'll just do liberal studies then. And I switched to like basically barroom trivia with a fucking diploma. And then I end up like, you know, graduating. I had no idea what I would do, bartended forever. Actually won a game show with my barroom trivia degree and like for student loans or whatever. And then just fell into this job. So
where's it? Did you bartend in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Where'd you bartend at?
Houston, a couple places, but mainly Houston off of Lennox.
Oh, the super fancy one.
I mean, a little bit. Yeah. I was like a little bit.
I heard they were hardcore back in the day. Like you had to do like this whole training was hardcore, and you have to fall like it's serious business.
Very militant. It was not like they were like very serious. I mean, you made really good money, and it was. I loved. In hindsight, I liked working there. At the time, you're like, it sucks. I don't want to wear a wool vest and dress up like a fucking magician and a bow tie and like and then just for people A-trips or whatever. But sorry for my girlfriend's dogs.
No, it's a pro dog podcast, not the red and black dog, but that.
Yeah. But no, so it was great. And then I worked at a couple other places, but mainly there. And then kind of just fell into this job. Like literally the president of our company came in. I just started talking sports with him. Do you want me to go tell them stuff?
No, you're good, man. This is part of it. It's ASMR for podcasting.
Perfect. But yeah, so I did that. And then I got into this. Like I did comedy for a long time. I don't know if you can ask this or if you want me to keep.
No, it's part of it, man. It's our first pod together. We're learning.
I love it.
That might have been the end of the dog.
Yeah. So they, but no, so I did that for a long time, and then kind of like, like fell into some luck, and the president of SDS came in. I just heard him talking about football, and I just always want to talk about SEC football or college football in general. And then gave me a chance doing some video stuff with him, and then got a full-time gig with him, and that's pretty much it, man. And the rest is like, I guess, kind of history. I've been there ever since. I ran their social media for a long time, and it's just like it's been so much fun, just because is anyone that, like, as you know, right? Like, getting up to every day and one, not having to put on the fucking bow tie and wool vest,
right?
Which was 6 sizes.
But you still could.
There's no way I would fit into it. But yeah, I could.
You should do a bit. You should just do college football Uncensored StreamYard just from the attire. See what it looks like.
It's not a bad idea. But yeah, man, and then you're just getting to talk about college football every day and interact with the fans, good and bad. I love it, man. It's just, and now it's like the best time of year too, besides the heat. I can't wait, man. I can't wait.
Oh yeah, no, the Thursday night game against Ball State. It's just I'm just going to I will say last year I remember for Bowling Green that was also a Thursday night game, and it was the start of the Joe Milton era, or so we thought. And I remember I had I think 2 red eyes that day, like 2 red eyes. So I had one early that morning for school and doing stuff, but then I had another one because I'm like, I might be tired for this game, so I took another one.
You mean like red eyes, like a drink?
Yes. Okay, you meant like flights. No. McGee Tyson's not pulling that off. No, that's not happening over there. But no, like multiple. So I was like, I remember I turned to my fiance and I was like, I can like feel that, like I just felt like I was tripping because of how much caffeine, and I was like, we might have a problem. Like I'm so amped and so aware of my surroundings. Like I feel like I'm about to lose it. I felt like Charlie at Philadelphia Eagles camp from over a decade ago in Always Sunny, where like that's kind of how I felt a little bit. So it was wild, but it was a fun experience, and I can't wait for that again in 3 weeks.
See, I'm older than you, and I've been in the service industry for such a long time. Like most of that, like the caffeine intake, like any normal person, like Conor O'Gara, normal dude, healthy, takes care of himself, in great shape, like eats his vegetables. We have different ways that we go about our work day. Like he is much more like, and I also have like crazy ADD. So I will wake up and I remember like, cause he's like, we've done, live events together in the past when we did a podcast together. And so he would just be like astonished at the amount of caffeine that I'd be putting into my body. Cause it would used to be like, I would wake up and go to Starbucks and get like a latte with 3 extra shots, so like 5 total. And then get like a 5-hour late in the day and have to get like some coffee because, dude, like to be fair, also when I was doing social media for SDS, like in especially 2018, 2019, I was doing like Saturdays would be I would wake up like on my own because I'm so excited for game day. I would wake up at like 7 and you're working at 8:30 and you don't stop until like 1. And so it's like, it's like a 6. I love it, but it's, man, yeah, it's oof. So
yeah, that's a lot. I could never do those kind of jobs. I can't do a social media job. I did that once out of college, and I was like, this is not for me. This is not my jam. I can't be on social media this much all the time. It's not for me. It's for some people, but it is a skill, and it's a skill and patience that I don't have. We're gonna play a game here, Chris, on this edition of the pod. I thought this would be a fun idea, and I think it fits your personality type really well. One of my favorite sports writers, Drew McGarry, over at Defector, previously Deadspin, he does this series for NFL where he's like, why your team sucks, preparing for the end season. I don't know if you've ever read those pieces, but they're fantastic. And he outlines, it's his own way of previewing each NFL team. And it's one of my favorite reads each and every year. We're going to do that with college football, though, specifically the SEC that you're quite familiar with. So I'm going to throw you a softball to start off with here, Chris. Why your team sucks, but we're keeping this just to this year based on where they're at, their schedule, what you think about their season this year. So basically this is worst case scenario for every team.
Okay.
Why your team sucks. Number 1, the Vanderbilt Commodores.
Oh my God. Well, your coach looks like a penis. For one. The other one is your traditions of having a pregame tradition of carrying an actual anchor to the field, you're at best you're tiring everyone out. I mean, it's not a good look. Don't give me a chore before I have to go play a 3-hour football game or a football game over 3 hours. Why they suck? I mean, and I hate to say it because it's such low hanging fruit, but it, like no one's interested in coming to that stadium that's a fan of Vandy. It's just people that like, oh, you know what? I love Luke Bryan and we're playing him week 3. Fuck yeah, let's go up there. Like, I mean, they live in basically what is a bachelorette party come to life as a city. And it is, I mean, it shouldn't be that tough to recruit there. They do it for baseball. But also just the talent deficiency. I will say, I think that their quarterback was great at media days, and I think they have better receivers than people give them credit for. But man, they ought to play UConn at the start of every season, and whoever loses has to quit the rest of the year. That's it. Just for real.
I mean, they opened. Do you know where they opened this year?
Hawaii.
Yeah, August 27th. We're like 18 days away from them opening the season.
It's also fucked up. I'm happy that we get football early, but it's fucked up that Vandy is the first team that we get to watch out of the SEC because it's like.
Hold on, we're here for Vandy, Hawaii. I'm watching every second of that.
Oh, without a doubt. But I'm just saying, like, I would rather, like, listen, I live in Atlanta. You grew up around here, so it's like, I've always liked Georgia Tech. They're basically just a sterile program that is no threat to anybody.
I got you. Ready?
Dude, you're going to give me PTSD because I had one of those. As soon as my dad bought it for me, literally at the BP that is still off of North Avenue, I drank it in front of him. And if you know anything about those Coke bottles, they don't have value after you drink them. So, yeah. But honestly, it's a Tech bottle. I don't think that thing has a lot of value anyway. But
wow.
I mean, no offense. It doesn't. But I think so. Vandy is them starting out the year is like when Tech would start out against Clemson, and they're not going to get blown out by Hawaii. I hope they beat Hawaii. But man, the expectations are super low. And honestly, why they suck is because their coach doesn't get that they suck.
I like that. I just think they should run the triple or the air raid. Like, I think it's one of those things where I just don't understand why they're not doing that. Clark Lee is building a pro style. Like, it just feels too much like he's trying to build a Northwestern type team to me. And I just don't know if you're going to have the time to do that, where you're going to have a lot of losing, terrible, terrible watches before you get to even that. And the difference is the Big Ten's not like, there's a path for Northwestern to play that way and succeed a little bit. That's not the case in the SEC. Like, it's just not, you can't do it.
If we could juggle the coaches and send somebody, like if I had like 3 wishes, one would be to send Mike Leach to Vanderbilt. I was
going to do Jeff Monken. Like, he's just been so good at Army. I would send him to, like, he'd be a pain in the ass in this division. I had Monken on a couple months ago. Awesome dude. But I would hate to have him in this division. Like, Tennessee didn't even play Army. So they were like, Akron's on the calendar. Army's out. We're not putting the triple option early in the calendar. Because I think they looked at it as, like, we'll never know for sure. But they had a September, which is already just going to define whether or not this team wins 10 games with Pitt and Florida. You have Army in between those two. And you're just like, people who don't understand football, it's like, you cannot throw a good triple option team in the middle of that. That just throws everything up and just screws your entire month up.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, too, like, that's why they probably should have done it at Vandy. I say Mike Leach because nobody likes watching the triple option anymore. It's a high school.
I don't know. Coastal does a good job of it. Like the speed option, I don't know what they call it, but their version of the option is fun as hell.
For sure. But I'm saying, like, if you put Vandy with the triple option, like a Paul Johnson thing, you have the ceiling of your program at 7-5, which would be awesome for Vandy, right? I say the same thing for what Leach is doing at Mississippi State, but it would be more progressive. They're throwing the football, so it's more entertaining to watch. You put Vandy with the triple option, and anyone that has seen a team go against it, I watched Bama do it last year against Mercer, I think, at one point, and like these cut blocks and stuff like that. You see it happen like with Georgia in the past, especially with Georgia Tech. Like, the last thing you want is injuries, and Vandy already gets enough shit from everyone else. If they were like knocking out, like, contending teams and their best players, they would finally get kicked out of the league.
Yeah. There you go. Relegation. That's one way to get relegated. I remember you had, was it last week or 2 weeks ago? You had the Mississippi State guy on from.
Oh, it was last week. Yeah.
Yeah, last week. And I think he mentioned that like Mike Leach is not with a 3rd-year starter. What was the stat that popped for me?
So we had Jake Wimberly on, and he's from ESPN in like Jackson. Tyler actually, my co-host Tyler Huck actually brought this up, I think, where they have won 9 games or more every time he's had a 3-year starter. I think it's
third year. Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm. So that's something to watch. So we'll see. And they bring a lot of pieces back, but we'll get to Mississippi State. Next up, Kentucky. Why does Kentucky suck in 2022?
So the expectations are too high, and the fan base has kind of gotten a weird arrogance about it, which like you kind of think is endearing to it to an extent, but then like they've kind of bypassed like oh, good for you guys. Like 8 wins in Kentucky would be a great year. But now it's like this whole thing, them thinking that they are just going to waltz into like a second place finish in the East. I don't know why that's the case. The reason why Kentucky, reason why they would suck this year is because Will Levis was last in the SEC in interceptions last year. He threw the most. Like I get it, man. You put mayonnaise in your coffee and you eat bananas with a peel on. Fucking great. That does not like, and I think he is a better draft, like NFL combine type prospect than anyone else in the SEC, including Bryce Young. Like he will be more impressive without game tape. Like if he was just throwing with shells on or with like in like shirts and shorts. But you lose 3 offensive linemen to the NFL. You lose the best receiver you've had in the program in at least 25 years, probably since Craig Yeast, in my opinion. I just don't think they replace that out of, just like that. So, I mean, again, nobody's besides maybe Tennessee fans is really pulling against Kentucky. So it's like, I don't want to see them fail. And we love Stoops, but they've had 2 10-win seasons in the last 40-something years. Granted, they've done it in the last 4 years, and it's a testament to how great of a job Stoops has done. I just don't think that you lose Wan'Dale Robinson, 3 NFL caliber offensive linemen, and then walk into the season with everyone else, not everyone else, but a lot of other teams in the East kind of elevating where their stature is. Like if this was last year, sure. Like, I mean, maybe they'll be fine. But South Carolina's better. Tennessee has arrived, in my opinion. Florida will still be Florida. I think that's a road game for them. So I just don't think it's a given that they're going to be like the second or even third best team in the SEC East this year.
Here's my take. They get swept by Florida, Georgia, and Tennessee this year. I think they get swept.
Okay.
You look at it and like you said, Kentucky fans just Mark Stoops has done a fantastic job. Like there's all the credit in the world. We all like Stoops. Tennessee just went in and took your best player, the state. Like they just went in and Kristen Conyer. It's like, all right, done deal. We'll go ahead and take him. Number 1 player in the state. Mizzou, we'll go in. Jadavian Bradley. All right, we're doing that. There is a difference. There is a ceiling for Kentucky and Mizzou and South Carolina that Florida, Tennessee, and Georgia just do not have. Like it's just a different thing. And you can just moan about it, but it's like there's a reason that there are no national title banners in your building. There is a reason for that. And there never will. Like that's like one of those things where I think with the college football playoff, it ruins a lot of this, and it ruins a lot of fans' brains about what they can be, and where it's like, no, like there's no scenario where Kentucky beats Alabama in the SEC title game and then beats Ohio State and Georgia or something in the college football playoff. Like that, you're not running the gauntlet. Like that's just not happening. So
and that's kind of what sucks too, because it's like you don't want. I've always said this: like fans need to have more realistic expectations, and like it's never going to happen because it's their fans, and you honestly should be like, you know what, you go win your 8 games and you like it. Like that's fun.
But it's like, and I feel sad because like Tennessee fans get a bad rap for just the craziness, the mustard bottles, whatever. But like having high expectations in Knoxville is okay. Like they've won national titles. They have the money. They have the resources. They're in a recruiting area where like, no, Tennessee actually should. Like it's okay to have unrealistic expectations at Tennessee because they can win a national title. They can build a Goliath Death Star type program. And we'll see. Danny White's doing a great job across the board as AD, and it's just been a home run hire. And we'll see as Tennessee continues to kill in NIL and what Nico looks like coming in the building next year. But I mean, look, we'll get to Tennessee in a second. I just think you get Florida right after Florida potentially loses the home opener to Utah. They're not starting 0-2. Like Florida owns them in that series. Like Florida owns Kentucky. I don't think they're losing to Kentucky back-to-back years. It's not a thing. Tennessee, they get them at home this year. They're going to beat Kentucky. Done deal. And then you look at Georgia. Like Georgia does not fear Kentucky for the least bit. So you're looking at best case scenario 9-3. I think Louisville is a much improved team. They could beat them like Louisville in a shootout. We just saw what Kentucky did in a shootout against Tennessee last year. Malik Cunningham's a dude, and Tion Evans, my guy. He is in the backfield for them. But I don't know. I just I think Kentucky fans are in for a rude awakening next year, where it's like 8-4, 7-5 feels
This is a
right
good
to me.
year.
Yeah,
It's
but
still
they're
like
just thinking like SEC East title. Like you're seeing, like I'm listening to podcasts and they're like Kentucky's my pick to win the East, and I'm like, oh my god,
that's
that's
mind
not
blowing.
happening.
They've dominated South Carolina. They should beat Mizzou, but like again, and you get Georgia at home. I just don't think that Georgia at home, like, and again, they've done a really good job with the stuff like with like Stoops. They've put money into the program. They've like got the facilities have been an upgrade. They've done a better job in recruiting. They did the upgrade at offensive coordinator last year, but I just don't. And Levis should be better than the 13 interceptions from a year ago. But Levis is kind of all they got. I know they have Chris Rodriguez, but if I have to see that kid fumble on the goal line one more time and cost me covering like an over, I'm going to lose my mind. So I think you're right. I think they're probably third or fourth.
Yeah, but we shall see. We shall see. Next up on our list, the Missouri Tigers.
Oh God,
why did the Missouri Tigers suck in 2022?
I hate this because my best friend's a Mizzou guy. I think they are so disrespected. And don't forget, like when they first came in the league, I've said this before, and I'll say it. I don't know if your listeners know this. When they first came in the league in 2012, in the preseason, they lost all 5 starting offensive linemen and their 6th best OL. Like they lost their entire offensive line going into their first year in the SEC, which is everything's one in the trenches in this league. They go to Atlanta back-to-back years after that. Right now, I just don't think they have the weapons, and I don't think they have the quarterback. Like Missouri's been a program where as much as we give them shit for being too far away and they're not in the Southeast and Columbia looks like a fucking nap, it looks pretty bad. But at the same time, one thing they've always had in that program is a stable quarterback, besides Matt Mock, who he was unstable in a lot of ways, mainly off the field. But like you've seen
Matt Mock.
Yeah, most people want to. A lot of guys, they're 3 and 4 year starters. They have not had any kind of stability at that position. And I think Drink is a great coach. I hope he's there forever, just from, a media day standpoint. They should be better at receiver, especially. I don't know how you replace Tyler Beatty. That defense was atrocious last year. They will challenge Vandy to be the worst team in the East.
I could see it because you look at the schedule and then you think about it. You're like, who are they beating in the East? Like, who are they beating among Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, Kentucky, and Vandy? It's Vandy. I just don't see them being better than anybody else. Like Brady Cook, if you're a fan, like cool, but I don't see it. Like, I think this is a worse team than last year.
They were so one-dimensional last year, so it's amazing they were even able to get to a bowl. But you got Luther Burden coming at receiver. You still have the kid from Ohio State from 2 years ago. If they're healthier, maybe the passing game arrives, because I think Drink is a good offensive line. But man, if your best win from last year was to beat Florida, if you think about it, their 2 biggest wins since he's been there, LSU and Florida, both at home, both nail biters, and both those teams were really bad.
Yeah, like the Florida win. I mean, look, you take it, whatever, but like that's the whole thing with South Carolina, Mizzou, and they were talking about the Florida win. I'm like, Mullen, they were ready for Cancun. That was 1, 2, 3 Cancun. Like that was not the same Florida team down the stretch there. So I don't know about that. Next up, South Carolina. Why did the South Carolina Gamecocks suck in 2022?
Let's see here. The defense has to be better for sure. I think if it's anything, it's the offensive line, because one thing, I think Spencer Rattler is good. I think it's so funny watching people like he's like so polarizing for whatever reason. And I even said last year, like, he seems like he's kind of an asshole, but I think that kid, he's 15-0 as a starter. He left OU with a 70% career completion percentage. He had over 70% in I want to say 11 of his 15 starts, like all time. The kid is talented for sure. He also had a lot more talent around him at OU and also had Lincoln Riley. So I wonder what that looks like going into this year, because I think South Carolina was ranked 94th or worst in every single major offensive statistical category a year ago. Total yards per game, rushing yards per game, passing yards, and then scoring. That should obviously get better with Satterfield in year 2. And you're not starting a fucking 25-year-old grad student named Zeb. Anytime you're starting a guy named Zeb and it's not on the offensive line or in some strongman competition, it's probably not going to be good. So I think they'll have an upgrade at quarterback. I just wonder what it looks like with the talent around him, because you're going from a place where you had 11 total 4 or 5-star players, I think at the skill positions around him at OU, or maybe it was the offensive line, and he has one. It's offensive line. He has one at USC. So I don't know if they can protect him. maybe things are fine. But that offensive line was bad last year.
Yeah, I'm not convinced. I think you look at that schedule too. We talk about bad schedules. South Carolina's schedule they're not going bowling. Like, let me just go ahead and put this on record. They're not going bowling this year. Like, they're taking a step back.
And that's fine. Like they shouldn't have gone last year. And I hate that for South Carolina fans. My family lives in Lexington. My mom's a pastor, which I'm sure is a surprise to anybody that's heard me speak and the words that come out of my mouth. But like, I love Beamer, right? They're kind of like the Arkansas of the East. I think historically they're Mississippi State of the East. They're 7-5, 8-4 at best for like their entire program history. But like,
I was gonna say, I think Kentucky fits more Arkansas East to me.
Well, I'm just saying for this year, just because, and you kind of maybe interchange them because Beamer's fantastic. He's magnetic. Everyone enjoys being around him. He's put sparked a lot of excitement into that program. No one's pulling against South Carolina besides Clemson fans, right? No one's pulling against Sam Pittman. In the same way, nobody's pulling against Shane Beamer. I just don't know with both of them, those schedules are brutal.
I mean, they go to Arkansas in week 2, and then they get Georgia at home in week 3. I mean, you're at Kentucky. You pulled A&M this year in the West.
Well, no,
in
that's their level.
Yeah,
that's a trophy game, bro. That's real.
I mean, and then you close just the gauntlet where it's like the bad vibes closing stuff is just what you don't want. And that's the bad vibes at Florida, who might figure it out by that point and really be rolling with Richardson, Tennessee at home, and then at Clemson. Like, that's just not how you want to end your season. That's 3 just games that you're not going to be favored in. And you just don't want to go into the offseason with a 3-game losing streak. Like, that's not where you want to be when you're in year 2 and you're trying to sell the vision of this program. Next up, the Florida Gators. Why will this team suck in 2022?
I mean, I don't know who Anthony Richardson is going to hand off to, throw to, whatever. Florida is such an enigma because the only thing really any of us outside of Gainesville know is Anthony Richardson. And I think Anthony Richardson is on paper talented enough to be like, and hear me out here, I'm not comparing him or saying he's as good or going to have a year like Cam Newton. I think he is built like Cam Newton in terms of like his like physical abilities, and like he's got a cannon for an arm. He's incredibly athletic. I mean, I saw him at media days. I don't know if you were there. He looks the part, right? I don't like Cam had to do all that on his own. I don't think we've ever seen anything like that kind of season where somebody had to do like all of that on their own. He would have to do that. And I think even if he was able to be that level of talent, you still play Georgia. You still get Tennessee, and that's at Tennessee this year. You got to play Kentucky. I think Florida State will even be better. I think this is like they're going to lose to Utah. Like Utah is a very good team. That's a potential like college football playoff like bound type team. I think 8 wins would be incredible for Florida. And I don't think they realize that. I just don't think they have like the talent everywhere on that team yet. And there's not a more dysfunctional program in this league than that one right now, which says a lot because Auburn is also in this league.
I don't know what I'm going to do if we lose to Florida this year. Like if I'm in the bill, I don't know what Knoxville is going to be a very, very interesting place if that's the result on Saturday afternoon, end of September. Like that is, if you're not going to do it this year, I just don't know when you're getting over the hump. I don't know when you're moving past that demon.
If somebody told you right now you would go 10-2 with losses to Georgia and Bama, and like just flat out, you would take that, right?
Yeah, 100%. Like that's that's an amazing season.
What about 8-4? But you beat Georgia or Bama. Say it's Bama, but you also lose to like a Kentucky or a Florida.
I'd rather lose to Kentucky than Florida.
Okay, that makes sense.
I would rather move on from that and just be like, oh, 1 year blip, like Kentucky got us, whatever, like a weird bad Hendon game, like it, whatever. But like getting over the Florida thing is paramount with this new administration. Like, I think that's just it. It's like establishing this regime that it's going to be different with Napier and Heupel, and that this is a different type of thing. So, I mean, I'm also, a lot of people have put 8-4 for Tennessee, and I just don't think that's just too clean to go from 7-5 to 8-4. And basically what they look at is like same results from last year, except you flip the Pitt game where you beat Pitt this year on the road, and you lose to Florida, you lose to Georgia, you lose to Bama. I forgot who else would be on that list of who we lose to. Who am I missing? Georgia, Bama, Florida. There's one
LSU.
other team. LSU. That's the other one. Yeah. Because they won't be favored in any of those games. They'll be favored in the Florida game. I don't think they'll be favored in LSU. Probably not favored in Pitt. I don't think they're going to be favored at Pitt. But we'll see. But the whole Pitt's defensive line is top notch. I don't know if you've seen the left tackle spot at UT right now. JJ Crawford versus Gerald Mincey going on right now. I mean, if there's a scenario, which we might find the next week, where Darnell Wright has to move back to left tackle because the left tackle spot is just bad, and then Davis is going to be at right tackle from our walk-on. I mean, you can live. That's kind of what they had to do from the majority of last year, but I don't know. Like, it's just that the Pitt game scares me a lot more than Tennessee fans should be. Like, I'm more confident about Florida than I am Pitt, and I don't know if a lot of fans are feeling the same way.
You should be. I think that's spot on because you have to win that game. You need to go into Florida with as much confidence as possible. And I think you still need to win the Florida game. That's more of a must win maybe than Pitt. But like Pitt, you should have beat them last year. I said this is a joke last year. Like Heupel should not. He should just do his best to only go 5-7 at best. These expectations would go crazy, right? And it's what's funny too is like I think Tennessee's gonna be great, but some of the stuff that we do as like fans in general, right? We always think like, well, all right, like we only lost this game. Arkansas is a perfect example. Like we won 9 games last year. Of course, we're going to challenge for the West. We almost, we only lost to Bama by 7. Like, we're going to, shape this up. We're going to do this better, blah, blah. And it's like, we have KJ Jefferson. And then you start looking at that schedule and you're like, you're just assuming that all of the losses or all the wins are going to stay wins.
Right. And that's how sports works. It's just everything's linear. You just make that adjustment and then it's just not how sports works.
Right.
I don't know. We'll see. I think ultimately one of two things happen. Either Tennessee takes a step back and they go 6-6 and they have a season from hell and injuries are a problem. The offensive line sucks. Like that's a real possibility. And then I think it all in the corner, like the secondary is still just a very, very, very big question mark. So we'll see. Yeah. Like I think they are still in a position to get torched a lot this year, but or they win 9 or 10 games. And I do think it's one of those two things where we see this with year 2 coaches now. Like it's easier to have these fast turnarounds because of the portal, because of the way this stuff works. It's also, do you know how many teams in the top 10 in scoring offense last year did not win 10 games? How many teams?
There's probably one.
Do you know who it was?
Y'all.
Yeah, that's it. So it's like if you're a top 10 offense next year, I like the odds where I'm like, this is a scoring sport now where it's just like people joke on Tennessee's tempo and everything, but I'm like, Tennessee was not out. They look at the final score. You watched the Alabama game, like the Josh Jobe not paying attention. Like Tennessee was in that game in the fourth quarter. They were still in it. They did not have the bodies to finish it, but they were in it.
I will say, I don't know if we were trying to save Tennessee for last, but we'll get into it, man. I think
let's just get into Tennessee.
The reason why I think I bring up the stuff about Arkansas and like the fans, like everything's linear, like you said, right? Why I think that doesn't apply to Tennessee. Number one, and maybe the most important thing out of everything, you know what you didn't do this offseason was lose 34 plus players in the transfer portal.
Yep.
Like that alone is huge, right? I do worry about the defense, not because it won't be better. It would almost have to be, but because it's been a thing everywhere Heupel has been where they score so fast and it's so much fun to watch and they're so fucking efficient, especially with those early game, first quarter, first drive scripts and stuff like that. One of the best bets that anyone should have made last year, it's like probably the best bet I made all year, was Tennessee to score first against Georgia.
My God, I said this in this podcast. I got Matt and I were arguing about it. I'm like, I told all my family, I'm like, Tennessee is going to be winning at the end of the first quarter against Georgia. Right. I promise you Tennessee will be winning because Georgia's going to play their style. They're going to be like, oh shit, we got to adjust. Like this is a problem. And they adjusted.
And they're going to score on anybody. I think that continues into this year. I hate that you guys lost Velus Jones and all that kind of stuff like that. Maybe
Jalen Hyatt looks like a player, though. I think Jalen Hyatt's gonna be really good in the slot this year.
I think that
I'm not worried about wide receiver. That's like one of the ones I'm not even the least bit worried about. Squirrel White, my dude, he's gonna be a freshman sensation. I think big squirrel guy.
Like with Heupel, especially, they're going to be better. I think that you could leave September 4-0. I don't think that's like crazy. I think it's dangerous that is kind of the expectation because that schedule is also still pretty difficult with Tennessee.
I just want 3-1. I want 3-1.
I mean, but because you still got to go to LSU and you get that Bama game and stuff like that. But I will say this: I think you don't lose all that to the portal. Like Hendon Hooker is finally getting, you've seen it kind of shift throughout the summer. People are finally paying attention. He was one of the best quarterbacks, if not, statistically, he wasn't the best quarterback, I guess, because of Bryce Young, the numbers he put up. But Hendon Hooker is a top 5 quarterback in the country, flat out. And the stuff about Tennessee, I don't know if they turn around to 10 games this quick because of how the defense is. Just not like because of the team or anything with the talent, just because of the way that it's consistently been with a Josh Heupel coach team. Not worried about the offensive line. Maybe I should be, but like I think that's like the way that offense is run. I've seen worse offensive lines under Heupel have more consistency, like or more success. The fact that he was there for Drew Lock and made him one of the premier. I mean, Drew Lock set an SEC record for touchdowns in a season under Heupel. The biggest thing with a place like Tennessee, I don't know if it happens this year, but Tennessee will compete for SEC and most likely I don't know if they'll play for a national championship. I'm not saying that, but they will be in contention starting this year for the SEC championship for as long as they want to be, because with NIL, one of the things NIL is going to do is bring back some of these like dormant, like absolute blue bloods and powerhouses, teams like Tennessee, teams like Miami. You would think USC, but they're not spending money. Tennessee, their alumni, their fans, they want to win. They will provide the resources. It is a great tradition. It's a great university. It's in a great setting, one of the top stadiums. Tennessee will start competing for consistent SEC and potentially national championships this year. And after this year, it's game over. I mean, there's not next year. There's not a man. I wonder if they will start being like well into the fourth in those games against Georgia, Bama, and they will start being expected to win those after that. I think Tennessee is a program that should scare everyone in the country, especially in the SEC.
I mean, the quarterback room next year might be Milton Jackson, and Nico. Like, that's filthy. Like, if that's their spring choices, yeah, Joe Milton's still gonna be there.
Okay, think about this too. You went 7-5 or 7-6. You should have beat Purdue. Yeah. Other games too. That
we're not talking about the Purdue game. That just that ruined a day for me. And I told Fiance, I was like, this is the dumbest reason to be so pissed off. But I'm like, I'm going for a walk for an exhibition game. Like, I'm so pissed. Right. Like, that game ruined my night and everything. I was so pissed off about that game. But more than any other game this past year.
If Milton doesn't start against Pitt, you'll probably win that game. Like, if Booker, I just the potential is through the roof of this team.
I agree with you. But we shall see. We shall see. Georgia, have you heard about this? Have you seen this? Georgia Bulldogs, they won a national championship this year. This might be hard. Why are the Georgia Bulldogs going to suck in 2022?
If we talked about this last night on our podcast at CFB or College Football Uncensored, shameless plug, but I think Georgia has the easiest route and the best chance at winning the SEC over Bama, because that schedule is a lot easier than what Bama's is. If something happens, though, Drew Butler brought this up. He's a former punter for them and great. Georgia has blamed everything possible on Stetson Bennett. All of this shit about we are backup quarterback and former walk-on. Like, first off, he's started predominantly for 2 years, and he was a great quarterback. I think I have him going into this year as the second-rated quarterback strictly because he won a national championship. And I'm not saying that he's better physically, like his physical talents are better than Hendon Hooker or anything like that. But I think you have to take into account that he was able to win a national championship, block all that extra noise out. But going into this year, the fact that kid won you a national title, and it wasn't a foregone conclusion that he was the starter for next year. If going into this year, something happens in that Oregon game where they don't dominate from jump, because everyone feels like they should. If Bo fucking Nix especially comes in here and takes you to halftime, takes you into, I don't know, late in the second half or half of the second half where it's a close game. And think about this too. Lanning is a former coach under Kirby. We saw this with Arkansas when they were 3-7 in 2020. They were, I think it was tied, or maybe they were even winning at the half in game 1 against Georgia. Kirby's not going to try to embarrass Lanning. If something really kind of stumble out of the gates against Oregon and you start having this quarterback controversy again, Kirby has shown in the past that he can mismanage that situation. I don't think he did last year because JT Daniels was hurt. And and I think he handled it well by putting in Stetson. But if something happens where that's mismanaged and you don't have like any sort of congruent like flow with the offense, or the team gets divided somehow because they don't know who to trust at quarterback, that's how.
We'll see. Their schedule is a joke. I would actually be pissed off if I was a Georgia fan when I'm at the schedule. Like, with their ticket price, like at UGA tickets are preposterous. And you look at this home schedule, like you don't even get Oregon at home. You look at it and you're like, it's Tennessee. That's it. Like, you have one big home game this year if you're a Georgia fan. Like, that just kind of sucks, man. Like, I don't know. That's one of the things where it's like expansion. The one positive I look at is like, a lot of these like schedules just suck. Like, you look at it and you're like, man, this is kind of burning. Like, why do we have these like 4 or 5 just crappy games on the calendar
Are they ever
each
going to
year
play
and paying a lot of money?
Is Georgia ever going to have to travel to A&M?
That would be nice. Speaking of A&M, let's hit them next. A&M, why will they suck in 2022?
One, I apologize about the dogs again.
No, you're okay, man.
Okay. Hold on 1 second. There we go. Didn't help at all. Why would
StreamYard, it works. We can just mute right away. It's easy to go.
Yeah. So why would they suck in this year? Because expectations are crazy high. I do think that they are going to be better than they should be better at 8-4, right? They have talent on offense, especially the skill position. I think Max Johnson is a perfect fit at quarterback for Jimbo Fisher's offense. I don't think Haynes King wins that job. And Max Johnson, he's underwhelming in a way like Felipe Franks was, where they had the same stat line: 27 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, but nobody's impressed with it somehow. I wonder what that defense looks like, because you do have a lot of talent especially in the back end, in the secondary, and a lot of young talent coming in on the D line. But how does that look? Because you don't have Elko. You don't have Elko coming as the defensive coordinator for the first time in 4 years. And I think in today's talent is the most important part of any team, to win games in today's like modern football, right? I think the congruency and any time you can return as much familiarity, especially on the coaching staff, as possible, that's huge. And I'm not just saying it because I've watched Bama just let go of offensive coordinators going into the national championship game several times, and suffer the consequences of it. But I think that when you have that kind of consistency, where you have that, not from a recruiting standpoint, but from just the meeting standpoint, from a daily basis on that team, that's huge. And they don't have that. And also DJ Durkin, not sold on DJ Durkin. I don't understand how he even still has a job, to be honest. We're not going to get into that. But I don't think that this thing, when things go poorly for Jimbo, and this could happen in week 3 when they play Miami at home, because Miami's going to be a better team than people think. If things go poorly for Jimbo, he doesn't know how to handle that in stride. He will blame everyone else around him. He did it at FSU for years, and he will do that again, because now there's no more excuses. You've been given all of the resources they possibly have. I mean, people don't understand this, but they just started a $189 million renovation, plan or upgrade or whatever, to the facilities. That's a program that's already spent over $570 million just on football in those facilities since 2014.
Well, we'll see. I agree with you though. They're the hardest team for me to forecast in 2022. I could see them in a national championship game. I also could see them going 7-5. Anything's possible with this group, and I have no idea what to do with them. But we'll see with A&M. Ole Miss, old friend Lane Kiffin. Why this team will suck? You know what I kind of want to say here quickly on them? I kind of want them to suck just because I don't want it to be successful for teams to completely flip their roster with the portal. I want there to be a fallout from the lack of chemistry, where when you can't just plug and play, and you can't just move a whole roster over and then just be fine. I want more Texas State situations where Jake Spebedal did that with his whole team and they still were awful. That's what I want. Yeah. I want less the Western Kentucky, where they just move the whole offense and the offensive coordinator over to where is Western Kentucky? I don't even remember where it actually is. What's the town? Yeah, Hilltopper Town, whatever it is. Apologies to the Hilltoppers, but I don't want that. I don't want the immediate just it all works, because I want to believe that you still have to build this chemistry, and it takes a couple of years to get together, because this whole team is a portal team. This year, he is the portal king, and I understand he has to do that to compete. But I also don't want that way of building to work. I don't want teams to be able to flip the entire roster in the portal and win that way. Is that fair?
No, I completely understand. I think it's at some point, we're faced with this as fans. This is the future of the sport. And it's so much change. People hate change. Things I've always noticed, people hate spiders, snakes, and change. Some more than the other. And anybody that's followed the sport for a long time, it's our favorite thing, right? You only get a couple of I always say you only get 13 of these Saturdays a year. So they're precious. The season itself is precious. Like we love everything about like college football for the most part. This is where it's headed. And I'm kind of with you. Like, I'm not saying I want to see them fail because they had to go to the portal, because I mean, the SEC West especially is a tough place to go compete. Why they would suck this year, I think you don't have a guy like Matt Corral, who his leadership, I think, in like gutsy performances like that. Kiffin is really good at a couple of things. One, lying to your fan base in front of them. You know that all too well. I know that all too well. And the other thing is, and I think he's grown up, right? But the other thing is, I remember when he was brought on as like an analyst after the kick six for Alabama, right? They put him in a room with like the then offensive coordinator Nussmeier, and he was like, what would you do differently besides not kick a 57-yard field goal as time expired? And he like writes 5 numbers up on the board, circles. He's like, these are your best players, get them the ball. So you saw like Amari Cooper, Derrick Henry, Matt Corral last year. 8 of the last 10 places he's been, whether it be a coordinator or offensive or a head coach, like in the last 10 years, he's had a 30 touchdown or a 3,000-yard passer in 8 of them. The 2 times he didn't was at FAU, and then he had a running back that put up 1,900 yards and like 32 touchdowns. They will be good on offense no matter what, because it's Kiffin, right? Mm-hmm. They'll suck if they don't have a defense. And also that's another team where it's like they kind of snuck to 10 wins last year. Mm-hmm. Probably shouldn't have won that Tennessee game. I think if anybody could tell what real injuries and fake injuries were, they probably wouldn't have.
Also, Tyler Barron had a touchdown that was called back because they wanted to say that they meant to blow a whistle, but for whatever reason, because Ole Miss was not aware of said whistle, that negated the play that was snapped and was no whistle. But that's not here nor there.
You still have Bama. You played an LSU team that was not great last year. And I think they're going to be better this year, and I think that's at LSU. You get Bama at home. You don't draw Georgia from the East. Like I think their East. Like their opponents in the East are pretty manageable. You don't get Florida. I just think that like you did that last year. Like they haven't beaten Auburn, I think, in 5 or 6 years, right? And I think they get them at home, but I just don't think that's a team where we talk like this linear progression. Like, oh yeah, of course, but they're going to be even better this year. I don't think that's true. They lose both coordinators, right, for the first time under Kiffin. How does he manage that? The offense will be good. Zach Evans will be really good. I think he'll be the feature of that offense. Jesus Christ. I think they'll be better on defense. And that defense was bad last year.
I also want to be in the room, though, because I'm very curious, because like Kiffin's brother was going to come over and be a co-DC, and then a couple days later he's like, no, I'm not going to be a co-DC. I'm going to stay in Cleveland. I want to be a fly on the wall for that conversation. I wonder what he saw and what he knew.
I want to be a fly on the wall for any conversation with Kiffin.
That's probably true. That's probably fair. Next up, the Mississippi State Bulldogs. Why will Mike Leach's Bulldogs suck in 2022?
Because it's Mike Leach. Like the ceiling is 8 wins, I think. The defense could be better. You still get Memphis is not an easy game out of like the non-con. You get, I think they're at Bama. I don't know who they draw. Georgia from the East. That's I just. They could be good. Like they probably shouldn't have had that comeback win against Auburn last year.
It's pretty amazing, though. That was an amazing football game.
I just think that like if they are one-dimensional, like they have been, and especially can be under a Mike Leach team, then they are going to be like. I mean, they should be 5-7 or 7-5. That's it. Like it's like the window of success there is pretty small. It might be the smallest in the league besides maybe Vandy.
October 1st. Let me give you the October 1st through November 12th situation for State. A&M at home, Arkansas at home, at Kentucky, at Alabama, Auburn at home, Georgia at home. I mean, we talk about the 9-win stat. I don't see it with this schedule. This schedule sucks. Like this is a brutal schedule. Say it again.
They do return 17 starters, so I think that could be a thing.
That's great, but like, I mean, this schedule, I just don't see it. Like, that's nice, but I don't think the 17 starters are going to make a difference on the road to Kentucky, at Alabama, Georgia at home, even Auburn at home. Like, I don't know. And you're going to Baton Rouge. We'll see. That'd be 2 straight in Baton Rouge. I don't think that's happened very often in State's history. Auburn. I'm interested to get your take on this because I think I might be different than you on this. Auburn. Why will they suck in 2022?
from a talent standpoint, and it's because the offense, like if those receivers,
they're in the blue chip ratio.
Auburn has a lot of talent. Auburn is, it's maddening to watch because it's such a fascinating program. I think Harsin's a good coach. I think he will be a good coach.
They should have beat your team last year. Yeah, they had them on the ropes.
First off, not my team. I'm an unbiased member of the media. But yes, you're 1,000% right. That was awful. That was a miserable experience to watch. They absolutely should have. They should have beaten South Carolina. Like Auburn ended their season with a 5-game losing streak where they blew, I think, at least 3, maybe 4 games with a double-digit lead. They had to play a bowl game where they had to ride their bikes to the stadium basically because it was in Birmingham. You have the way that year ended, and then of course going into the offseason. Here's what I say about Auburn. Like that program has been run. Anybody that's like been around SEC football for a long time and knows like the old. So I'm talking like Philip Fulmer type, like good old boy days, right? Like where, listen, Bama cheated. I think a lot of teams cheated. That program at Auburn has been run by an inner circle of like roughly 9 dudes for the as long as I've been alive. And I saw that come into play last year where there's such like a power struggle with over what? Like, so I think Harsin, like if you didn't want Harsin to be your coach, like here's what I always say. If I want barbecue, I'm not going to go to fucking Brooklyn. So if I want somebody that is going to like understand the culture in the SEC, recruit in the SEC, like I'm not going to go to Boise, Idaho to get a coach. He's a good coach if you give him time. But in that situation, like I don't think he wants to deal with all the politics of it. If he loses to Penn State early, and they have like, if they have bad quarterback play, like if that offense is just Tank Bigsby, which we've seen, you can't have an offense, I think, in this day and age where it's just running backs or a running back. I think that, and I like Jarquez Hunter a lot. If they are one dimensional and can only run the football, they're in trouble. They're in trouble. The defense should be what it is, but you replace both. They're the only team in the fucking country that lost 3 coordinators because they hired an offensive coordinator who was a terrible fit. They fired him after 2 weeks. And like, I think that they have to be good. I think they will win 8 games.
And it all ended with them just going full Boise. Like I think both coordinators are his Boise guys, which is what he probably should have done all along. Like that was one of those where he let other people like kind of dictate his hiring. It seems like where
I don't let them. I think that Auburn basically came up and was like, you know what, like this is what we're going to do. Right. And that whole program, man, it's crazy in general. Like where you hear these stories like from people, and I'm sure you've heard them too, but like from like sources that like I definitely trust that watch the whole thing unfold. You had people going to Napier and like boosters meeting with him and his agent telling him who he needs to hire, who he needs to retain. And they hadn't even been contacted by the university yet. If they can stay out of his way, they'll be fine. I don't think that Zach Calzada, he's probably got the best arm in the league. I don't think
he feels like a Harsin guy though.
What's that?
He feels like a Harsin guy, like a Boise. Like you could see a Zach Calzada in Boise, just like putting up some fun numbers, being good.
He was bad in every other game besides that.
He was. Hey, linear legend, Zach Calzada. Linear Longhorn, right. People forget. I don't know. I think here's my thing on Auburn. I have a strong belief they are not finishing last. Harsin's too good of a coach. There's too much talent. I do not see them. He's not long for that job, but he's also not losing. He's not going to finish like 4-8. Like I just don't see that. I think worst case scenario for Auburn's like 7-5. I really do.
No, so I thought you said we were going to disagree because I completely agree with that.
Okay, I think we're on the same page there. I thought you were going to go the other way. Most people are, so that I like that. Last 2, Arkansas. Why will Arkansas suck in 2022?
The schedule, like KJ Jefferson, 21 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. That's awesome. I don't know if he is able to do that again because it's just difficult to do, right? Like maybe he's better, and they're one of the only teams in the country with a returning offensive and defensive coordinator for the 3rd straight year.
That matters. Yeah,
it does. But at the same time, and I love what they did in the portal, not just with like getting a bunch of dudes, but like it's going to be hard to replace, a guy like Burks, and you go out and get Hazelwood, who's a former number 1 overall receiver in the country coming out of high school. You go out and I love the Drew Sanders pickup at linebacker. That was a guy that lost his job technically at Bama, but was starting throughout, the first month of the season, just not over Dallas Turner towards the end. I think Pittman's a good coach. He's been able to turn that culture around very quickly. That schedule is a fucking nightmare. It is a nightmare. I mean, in the middle of like the thick of it, right? You have their schedule pulled up?
No, I do not. I can pull it up, but it's a rough schedule. Arkansas's got a rough one.
I've got a full still right here. I just didn't want to seem like I don't want any.
Well, no, hold on. Wait, hold on. just to be clear, if you're in the South, like any Southern person has Phil Steele just ready to go right here.
Yeah,
We should have done that from the start of just like, hold on, let me parse through here on my Phil Steele annual.
I do think that like you return seven, it says like 7 starters on offense. I brought this up at media days. He's 16-6 against the spread since he's been there, which is awesome. So any of you gamblers out there, but like last year, you saw what KJ Jefferson looked like against A&M. He was 8 of 15. He had like 200-something yards passing, but 180 of that was to one guy. He was terrible against Georgia, as most quarterbacks were. You don't get Georgia on this year's schedule. But this is what they do. Like they get South Carolina at home. I think they're 3-0, right? They beat Cincinnati.
I don't know if they beat Cincinnati.
They will. Cincinnati lost 9 starters in the NFL.
They did, but I mean, hey, we'll see. Luke Fickell, man, I don't know. We'll see. I will say they'll win that game. Let's just go with that. Yeah.
They beat A&M last year, but they also lost the previous. Let's see here. I'm just adding them up here. Minimum 4. I think it might have been worse than that. I think it was like 5 or maybe more. That's a neutral site game, so you're not at home for that. Then you get Bama at home, which I think
you're not beating Bama.
They think they might. They haven't done that in 15 years, but they have the opportunity. Which means at the very least, though, if you're getting geared up for that, you might be overlooking an A&M team that you have not done very well against, like in a long time. At Mississippi State, they've beaten in the past 2 years. I don't know if that continues. Then you go in the middle of all that at BYU.
They're losing that game. Let me just go ahead and say, Jaron Hall's a player. They are so well coached. Kalani Sitake's a great coach.
Yeah.
I think BYU's beating Arkansas. That's like a good middle. But wait, when is that? BYU's got Notre Dame and Arkansas in the middle of their schedule. What are they doing? I mean, people forget BYU was the Pac-12 champ last year. People forget like the Pac-12 South champ. They literally went undefeated against the Pac-12 South. Like BYU's a great program.
And again, and Pittman brought this up. Like they're not a slouch. They return 20 starters. They get a week off, but then you go at Auburn. People forget about this. As bad as people think Auburn was last year, Auburn beat them by 15 points on the road in Fayetteville. Liberty, which I don't know. Who knows with Hugh Freeze? And then you close with LSU, Ole Miss, and then that's a win at Mizzou. There's so many with that schedule. I don't see a lot of it's a guaranteed dub, and I think that it has the potential to go off the rails because of how difficult it is.
Last one. I don't know how to do this. Alabama. Why would Alabama suck? Because they all just bypass the season because they're like our draft stock can only go down from here. Like if you're Will Anderson and Bryce Young, you're like, what good does it actually do for me to play football this year? Like, what good? Do I just need to sit this one out? Like, I just don't know what it is.
So, in earmuff at Georgia fans, injuries for one would be an issue. I think it's one thing that sucked going into the end of last year, which was Georgia fans will argue this till the day they die, but injuries don't matter. There's a difference between losing players early in the season and being able to have 12, 14 games to find a replacement and figure out a plan. That's not really what got to happen to Bama last year. But also, let's not pretend that Bama team was they had the best offensive player in the country and the best defensive player in the country. That offensive line was garbage. They were 120th in the SEC in college football out of 131 teams in terms of sacks allowed. They were 13th in the conference in the same category. They had 6 yards rushing against LSU. And now to be fair, they lost every single backup running back besides maybe Trey Sanders, who's been kind of injury plagued in general. The biggest thing for me is this. They should have probably lost 3 games last year, maybe 4. They should have lost at Florida. They probably should have lost, but they did lose to A&M. They should have lost against Auburn. There's another one I'm missing. LSU probably should have beat them as well. Now they didn't, and that's one of the things that makes Bama Bama. At the same time, I don't think that's a guaranteed win at Texas at all. I think the offense should be really good. You have a lot of talent. The offensive line is not good. So if you have injuries, and then I don't know, you're going to get everyone's best shot like you always do for Bama, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they lose early in a game they shouldn't. I don't know what the makeup of the team is if they mail it in. I think there's leadership on this team, obviously, with Will Anderson, all that kind of stuff. The biggest thing for me is this. I said last year I didn't think Mechie was going to be good enough to win you a game. He literally did that against Auburn. Even though they had to replace 2 first-round draft picks with Jesus Christ, with Waddle and Devonta. They were able to do that. They don't have that this year. They don't have it this year. You don't have a physically imposing receiver. Like Jermaine Burton is not going to go out there at 6 feet, 185 pounds, and intimidate anybody that he lines up against. They have to have somebody step up at that position that that's been there for a while and be either a burner, whether it's like the Hatton kid from Louisville, and have what they
is Malachi Benson gonna play?
What's that?
Is Malachi gonna play?
Malachi.
Or what is his name?
Or?
The JUCO kid who just transferred that Tennessee was trying to get. What was his name?
The tight end?
No, the receiver. What was his name? Malachi. What was it? What am I thinking of? Why am I blanking on this? The JUCO kid, the number 1 JUCO kid.
I don't think he's this year.
Is he next year? Okay.
This year's next year. But I mean, you don't have a guy like Jameson Williams. Williams is a 4-2 guy. Metsy, who's been there for a while in that program. Again, the size is nothing that they're going to line up against the defensive back and dominate. That defense should be the best it's been since 2016. But if they are
Malik Benson, excuse me.
Okay.
Malik
Benson. If they are
able
to stretch the field like they were last year, this is going to be a tough scene because Bryce Young, I don't think he can do it 2 years in a row with that offensive line. That offensive line was bad.
We'll see. I mean, you took Vanderbilt's left tackle for this year, so that's just
not good.
That's rough if you're Vanderbilt. And that's the biggest fear for all these schools, where it's your best lineman is just oh, Alabama's just gonna be all right, we'll just go grab him. It's fine.
Well, think about this too, man. You signed the number 1 and number 2 offensive tackles in the country 2 recruiting cycles ago. Going into last year, they had 2 incoming freshmen that were number 1 and number 2 in the country at that position, both 5 stars.
Yeah.
And you're going to Vanderbilt to find somebody to shore up that offensive line. That says enough for me.
Well, that was a fun exercise.
Yeah, man.
That was fun, man. What can the good folks check out from you at College Football Uncensored and the good folks over at Saturday Down South this week, man?
So we're doing our preview series now. I think we have Auburn tomorrow, maybe Bama. I'm not really sure. We'll do Tennessee sometime next week. We'll have you on for that. But yeah, check out the podcast, College Football Uncensored. It's CFB_Uncensored on Twitter. If you're in the Atlanta area, we're doing a kickoff kind of meet and greet at Atlanta Spirit Works and Distillery at the Battery on the 26th, a Friday night. And then like I said, so follow along on social media and the only thing from SC is I don't write for the site. I do video more than anything. So check out our YouTube page and kind of follow along with that. And then Vern Funquist on Twitter. So
there you go. Support them because Connor O'Gara just telling Paul Feinbaum that Tennessee was beating Georgia this year, and Paul's just was all we needed.
Yeah, it was something.
There you go. Chris, thank you so much, and hail Parkview.
That's right, man.
All right, we are good.
Bro, I'm sorry if that was too long-winded or
Hold on, it's still loading. Hold on.
You're good.
Why is it still going? This has never happened before. I have to chop this. What in the world?
Encore?
Do you see it's still going?
Mm-hmm.
What is that?